Once a giant, always a giant. For me, it's only a giant.
What's going on YouTube? Diggy546 still in a dumpster fire. Let's see if we can get out in the next couple of weeks or months. But there's some news about the Giants that has been circling for a while now. At first we heard it from Malik Neighbors that he's been pushing to get Matthew Stafford. Now I wonder if they're going after Matthew Stafford so heavily because Malik Neighbors really wants him as a Giant, or I wonder if they just have aligning interests. Now, before I get into a little bit more about Matthew Stafford, apparently his agent has been meeting with the Giants to try to figure out a restructure if a trade were to happen. So it seems like the Giants are really, really locked in on going out and getting Matthew Stafford. Now, Schoen and Brian Daboll, they're in their final days. And when I say that, they don't necessarily have to worry about getting fired at the end of the season if they perform. But if they don't perform, they're getting fired at the end of the season. So they're in their dog days. If they're looking in the draft, they could possibly draft a rookie. You could probably convince ownership that maybe, you deserve another year if that rookie looks like he's going in the right direction. But if that rookie has a slow year, Brian Daboll, Schoen are both going to be on the chopping block, because if that rookie looks like he's not developing right and you have a team of two guys that should have been fired a year before, there's no way they're keeping their job at that point. So that makes perfect sense why the Giants would be going out to go get a vet quarterback to where they could feel very comfortable if that vet quarterback is out there playing and he could go out and win games in case you have a rookie that isn't ready to go. So Brian Daboll and Schoen are apparently going tough after Matthew Stafford. Now, of course, Matthew Stafford has been a good quarterback in this league, a great quarterback at times in this league for a while. He ended up leaving the Lions, going to the Rams and winning that Super Bowl. One thing about Matthew Stafford is he gets his number one receiver the ball. Calvin Johnson, almost 2,000 yards. Cooper Kupp, Triple Crown. I mean, he gets the ball to the number one receiver. So Malik Neighbors would have an incredible season. I just say he doesn't get anything less than 1,500 yards, barring health. If he were to play with Matthew Stafford next year, I just can't see it going any other way. But yeah, right now the Giants don't have a single quarterback on the roster. Tommy DeVito is the one guy I think they have rights to him as a free agent. I would rather him just stay on the practice squad or walk. He knows the system. Whatever. If he's your third string and he's on your practice squad, fine. But I would like for them to bring in a vet. I can talk a little bit more about Matthew Stafford specifically, but I would like for them to bring in a vet again that could be competent, and then have a rookie in here. So let the rookie and the vet battle it out. If Matthew Stafford for some reason came in here and was washed, I don't think the rookie would take his job. Or maybe he would, because he's a top 3 pick, maybe. But I just think that if you have a vet in here like Jameis Winston, like another one of these vets that you could win games with, but isn't your long-term solution, I think that's your best course. Because if you read Matthew Stafford in here, the guy's 37 years old. I think he'll be 38 by the time the season starts, or into the season. And if he comes in here, what does he have? 3 years? If he's an alien, maybe 4 years? Because I think Eli Manning retired at like 38 or 39. Or maybe even 38, or maybe 37 where Matthew Stafford is now. I'd have to check on that later. But who knows when the cliff is going to happen? The cliff happens to everybody. To quote Max Kellerman, everybody falls off the cliff. The only person that didn't was Tom Brady. That's the only person that didn't. But is Matthew Stafford going to fall off a cliff? Because if so, you could possibly be trading premium draft picks, which I hope is not a number 1. But if you trade a number 2 to the Rams for Matthew Stafford, and you pay him $50 million. That's what Matthew Stafford's asking for right now. He wants $50 million a year. So if you do that, and you give him, a 3-year deal, you're strapped to this guy for the next 2 to 3 years. Like, you're strapped there. And you're paying him $50 million a year, and you've traded away a second-round pick. Maybe you go out in this draft and you take a guy like Abdul Carter, or you take a guy like Mason Graham, or you take a guy like Travis Hunter, blue chip player, a player that could be an all-pro type player. And in the second round, you could have gotten a guy like Jackson Dart that you could have developed into your starting quarterback. Well, now you're taking Matthew Stafford with your second round pick. So, a 1 to 2 year rental. And can you build the team up quick enough to take advantage of the 1 to 2 years that he has really great football left of playing, I'm not sure if you can. I'm not sure if you can get this team to a point where we can win a Super Bowl within the next 3 years. Is that possible? I mean, maybe you go out and you get another receiver in the draft that you think is really good. You got to fix the defense. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed. And I just don't see how we could do that within 3 years. And if you can't, if you don't believe that you can, and you don't have a plan for getting this roster turned around to where it is that good, then why are you paying Matthew Stafford? Why are you paying him? You're wasting money. I mean, at this point, this is them trying to go out and win 7 or 8 games next year or 9 games next year so they can keep their jobs. This is what I think this is happening, because to trade this capital and then to pay him $50 million a year after we just got rid of paying a guy $40 million who didn't deserve it, and Matthew Stafford may deserve $50 million. But again, if he was 34, I'd be willing to give up a first. I'd be willing to give up a first. I'd be willing to be much more flexible, but I would rather this pick be as low as possible. As low as possible. The Rams don't want to pay him $50 million, and they won a Super Bowl with him. They won a Super Bowl with him. I don't think they believe that it's worth the hassle of paying this guy $50 million a year to keep him for the next 3 years. And does Matthew Stafford even want to be a Giant? I'm sure he wants to make $50 million, and maybe the Giants are willing to do it, but does he want to do that? Does he want to spend his last 3 years on a team that has been a laughingstock over the last, almost 15 years now? Pretty much almost 15 years now. So does he even want to join that type of a team in his last couple of years? And would he veto the trade? Would he stop the trade from going through? Obviously, I don't think so, because his representatives are talking to the Giants, so he must want the money. But there's a lot of things to consider here. But if that does go through, let's go through some of Matthew Stafford's stats. So as far as last season for him, I mean, he had a solid season, not even a really great season, but a solid one on a struggling Rams team at the beginning, and they kind of picked it up in the second half. But 65% completion percentage, 3,700 passing yards, 20 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. That's a great ratio, but we'd like to get the touchdowns up if we're paying $50 million. I'm keeping the same standards. If we're paying somebody $50 million, I want them over 30 touchdowns. I want the team in the playoffs. That's the only reason that you're paying a guy $50 million. 20 touchdowns, like I said, 8 interceptions, 7.3 yards per attempt, solid. 93 passer rating. So he had 50 deep ball attempts. He ended up completing 26% of them. He had 3.1 deep ball shots a game. So he's taking about 3 a game, and he's hitting 1. Based on these stats, he's hitting about 1 every game, and he's taking 3 a game. So maybe he can bring that number up. But he ended up throwing the ball shorter a lot more this year because of a ton of injuries that happened. But still managed to get 51 explosive plays, and his explosive play rating was 99, which is 19th. So a solid season for Matthew Stafford overall. Got his team to the playoffs. The team picked up. The team started playing better team football over a season. But again, Matthew Stafford in his prime on the Lions, when he had bad teams, the team was not good. And some people could say he had a tough division. Yes, he had the Bears that were good at times. He had mostly the Packers and Aaron Rodgers to deal with. But right now, we got the Eagles to deal with, who just won the Super Bowl, who, without another team stepping up their level of play significantly, are going to win another Super Bowl next year. It's just the way it looks, the way that they're not penalizing them for manipulating the cap the way that they are, the way that they can continue to run the tush push, which I have no problem with them running. They should be able to win the Super Bowl every year until another team raises their level of roster to that level of roster, which I just don't see happening for the next 2 or 3 years, which, guys like Patrick Mahomes, of course, may be able to go out and do some heroic things to beat them. But you get what I'm saying. The Eagles are a juggernaut, and they have the best roster in the league, and it's been that way for like 3-4 years. Then you have the Washington Commanders with Jaden Daniels there. So you don't have a cupcake division. Matthew Stafford, to take the Giants to the playoffs, is going to have to push this yardage total from 3,700 to like 4,500 yards. It's going to have to go from 20 touchdowns to 35 touchdowns. And the interceptions are going to have to stay around 8. That he's going to have to play like a top 7 quarterback to get this Giants roster with whatever additions they make next year to the playoffs. Now, can he do it? I think he can. But again, how many more times can he do it? Can he do it next year? Can he do it the year after? Can he do it the year after? And what are we paying for? So, am I for getting Matthew Stafford in blue for the right price? If we give up a 3rd round pick, if we can get that number below $50 million, and we can get that contract to where it's a 2 to 3 year deal, where it's not backloaded, where he's getting paid maybe a ton of money the first year, and then after the 2nd year, if he's halfway, his arm is shot and he's old, you can get out of that deal. And we absolutely 100% should not take Matthew Stafford and then say, let's take a guy like Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. I think you have to take a quarterback. Or if you do take one of those guys, take a quarterback in the 2nd round, because we need to get a young quarterback in here. The Giants have not drafted a quarterback in forever. It's been like 7-8 years almost. So that's my take on it. You all let me know what you think of Matthew Stafford possibly being in blue.